Well, hi once again, everybody. Well, today's video is going to be a chance to improve the performance of your PC. And since I am very, very budget-minded, I'm going to do it in the most inexpensive and budget-minded way that I can. Now, let's say you have a hard drive. Now, if you have a hard drive, that's a challenge. You should probably consider going to SSD as soon as you can, as I've showed in some of my videos. However, let's say you have just a standard SATA-based SSD drive, and you want to improve the performance of that drive. Well, let's say you want to do what I need to do, which is improve both the performance of it and the size of it. Now, I could go out and spend a lot of money buying a new replacement SSD drive that is twice the capacity that I have, but that's not the way I think when it comes to being budget-minded. Also, I could just go ahead and put in another NVMe M2 drive, but they are also very expensive as well, and then it would sort of leave me with spare parts, which are not bad for me based upon what I do, but it may not be the most efficient for most people. But there is a way to do it in between those two. I have a 1 terabyte Western Digital Blue SSD in my main editing rig, and I want to get that capacity doubled. That was my initial motivation. But as I started looking into it, talked to some people, I found out that if I do it right, I could actually increase the performance, and quite significantly, anywhere between 40% and maybe about 90% from what I've heard. I went out and bought another SSD drive of the exact same type that I had, a 1 terabyte Western Digital Blue, and I'm going to add this to my computer. I have many extra SATA ports because my main hard drive, my drive C, is actually an NVMe M2 drive. So if this works the way I think it will work, when I add this second drive in, I will be able to double my capacity, and as long as I use RAID technology, a RAID 0, which basically takes as many drives as you want and butts them together into one contiguous drive space. At least that's the way Windows and other operating systems will see it. And these drives are using different SATA ports, which they are. I have a bunch of extra ones to spare. Then I will not only gain the continuous drive space being, in this case, doubled, but I should vastly improve the performance, the throughput from those drives. So hopefully that'll work out fine. Now, there are many different ways to do RAID. You can actually buy a hardware adapter card, which large network accessible storage systems use, or you could do it through software, even through Windows itself. Windows 10 supports what they call striping. That is the same thing as a RAID 0. However, there's a little extra overhead with the operating system do it. From what I've read, not a lot, but a little bit. And every little megabit per second counts when I look at things. So I'm going to do the in-between. This particular motherboard that I have in this computer is an Asus Z370. That motherboard has a lot of good features to it, including support for doing firmware-based or BIOS-based RAID technology, which is sort of in between having a dedicated piece of hardware to it that you would have to add, let's say, as a new PCIe card, and doing it through the software in Windows. And the first thing I'll do is, as long as I haven't had this computer apart in a while, I'm going to take it and blow it out like I did maybe about 9 or 10 months ago. And then from that point, I will add the drive and I will configure it. And I'll show every step I can possibly do related to that. So if you get anything out of this video, just keep in mind, I would really like you to consider subscribing to my channel. It would really be helpful. So the first thing is I'm doing a full Acronis backup of my drive E. And it's got a while to go. It says I got 46 minutes remaining here. So as soon as that's done, then I'll take the computer and I'll bring it outside and I'll air blow it out. So just have to wait and see how this goes. Okay, I got my computer out of my desk and out here to be blown out with my air compressor. As you can see here, it is quite dirty. Look at this filter on top. It's one of the filters that blows in. So I'm going to take the sides off and we're going to get this thing cleaned out. I have to blow the doors off too a little bit. The back side off. Well, here's a diagram of my fan layout. I think I showed it to you guys last time how that works, right? Okay, I got my brush, got the air compressor. It actually doesn't look that bad for 9 months. I think having the positive air pressure, as I said before, it looks pretty good. Do notice that I have changed the cooler on this since the last time I did the PM. It now has the Cooler Master Black RGB cooler on it. Everything else is pretty much the same. Also, the Elgato is now in here that I didn't have before. Don't want to brush the brush too much on the motherboard, only the large metal parts that you can see easily. You just want to get all the dust out, loosened up with the brush. And I think that covers it. Just need to clean the covers off a little bit. There's a little bit of dust on here, not that much. Again, this is my emblem that I etched into the plastic. That's good. What I want to do now is check the current performance of my drive E, which is a single Western Digital 1 terabyte drive that I have in there. So I want to run Crystal Disk Mark. And right now it's set for drive C. I want to change it to drive E. And then I'm going to actually do an all test, and we'll see what that looks like. Pretty standard read time. Okay, that looks pretty good. And so I'll save this, and we'll go ahead and put it next to the results once I've put the RAID 0 enabled with the second drive. Okay, now to install this drive here, right, I'm going to have to go ahead and add 2 cables. A SATA data cable, of course, which I have a extra one left over in my motherboard box to match the other one, and a SATA power cable. Unfortunately, I have to do a whole cable for 3 more SATA devices, even though I only need 1. So I'll speed through this, and we'll see how it turns out. Okay, I think that actually takes care of it. I can put the covers back on and try it out. Oh, let me just put one more tie wrap over here just to get these pretty much in line with each other. I'll probably be adjusting it some more as I go if I think it's interfering with the airflow in any way. Okay, I think that takes care of it. So I'll go ahead now and put the covers back on, and we'll hook it up and see what it looks like. Okay, I realized that the BIOS, there's a new version of it. So just to be safe, I'm going to go ahead and update it. What you see here is the USB that I've just created, which includes the file. And I'm going to take this USB and I'm going to reboot into the BIOS, and then I'm going to update the BIOS with that latest version. So let me shut this down, and now I'll restart the computer. And I'll hit the delete key in order to bring it back into the BIOS. Okay, so here we are in the BIOS. Let me go ahead and see if I can do the update. I have the USB still installed. Let's see if we can get this updated. Advanced mode, tool. I'm going to do the Asus Easy Flash Utility 3. I tell it to please select the BIOS update method via storage devices, and it sees the file on the USB stick. Do you really want to update the BIOS? Yes, I do. Now notice here it's currently version 0801, and now it's going to be this 1202. Let's update it. It's a good thing I have a UPS on it. You don't want a power failure to occur when you're updating the BIOS. Okay, successful. Guess it's resetting automatically. Go down to the computer itself. You see the slight glow here, right, from my RGB that's in there. Resetting a couple of times. Very common when you updated the BIOS. I heard a beep. Single beep is good. That's why I put those little speakers on. Like to hear that. So now it's booting up. It wants me to go into setup, so it wants me to hit F1. Oh, and by the way, if you notice here, right off the bat, I see the 2 Western Digital 1 terabyte drives. So they're both in there. Okay, I'm just going to do a save and exit at this point. Okay, I haven't made any changes, it says. Should boot up now normally. Windows is back up. All those extra reboots make me nervous as well. I'm going to log in as administrator. So in as administrator, I've shown this on one of my security briefs, how I create this warning banner to let me know when I'm in an administrator. Now I have to go and initialize the hard drive. Now I completely backed it up before, so I should be okay in terms of doing what I want to do next here, which is a complete reset of that hard drive. Before I do that, let me go into Manage. So if I do a right click on this PC, and I click Manage, and then I say disk management. Now it sees disk 1 as completely blank, which is what I want to do with the other one. So that's good. That's the one I just added. I don't want it to initialize it, so I'm going to cancel it. If I look down at the drives, I have a disk 1, which is my 931.51 gigabyte. That's the brand new one I just put in there. And I have a disk 2, which is the one that has an NTFS file system. That is the one that I was using as my scratch disk by itself. That's the original SSD drive. Now, if I go ahead and clear this by itself, it's not necessarily going to completely wipe it out for me, as I indicated in one of my previous videos. So let me go into command line and completely clear out that drive. Okay, let me open this one up again. I had it saved to the side here. And what we want to do here is we want to completely initialize disk 2, just the same as disk 1 is completely initialized. Those are the two 1 terabyte SSDs. This one here, disk 0, by the way, is my NVMe 1 terabyte. So I'm not going to touch that one at all. That one's perfectly okay. It has the partitions that I want and the free space that I want. So this is disk 2 I want to initialize. Now I want to use the tool disk part. You remember that one? So if I come in here and I run the command prompt, but I do more and I pick run as administrator, it's double checking that I want to do that. It's very powerful. And then I type into here disk part. That is the actual command that I want to run. Let me get a little bit closer into this. Now remember, it is disk 2 that I want to completely initialize, not disk 0 and not disk 1. This one is already initialized. So we come into this tool first. I won't go through all of the options on this utility. We did it last time in a previous video not too long ago. But I want to now run list disk, just to double check that it matches that. And sure enough, it does. You see here, I have the disk 0, 931 gigabyte, total size. It's got a free space of 429. I have a free section listed on that one, as you saw here, unused portion of it, 429. However, here, if you look at disk 1, that's the one that's already a brand new disk, as you recall. It's already been completely initialized. That's why it says it has a size of 931, but it's free of 931 because there are no partitions on it. I want to make disk 2 the same as disk 1. I have it completely backed up, so it should be no problem here. And as you recall from previous video, or go back and take a look at that, if I type in select disk 2, that's how I set focus on that disk drive. And it says disk 2 is now selected. Double check that over here. It is still disk 2 that I want, right? It's always good to have that open on the side, just so you know what you're doing here. Now, all I have to do at this point to completely initialize it, since it's already got focus by having been selected, is type the word clean. It's completely successful. So now if I come back over here, what do I see? It automatically reflected it. Now disk 2 and disk 1 are both clear. So now it's time to configure the RAID 0. Okay, before I enable the RAID, I do want to make sure I have the latest SATA drivers. That's recommended in one of the instruction sheets. So let me go ahead. I downloaded all of the updated drivers. You already saw me do the BIOS. So now I'll also do the SATA. You should only do these things as needed when it comes to these drivers. So there is a new driver for the SATA. It was released not too long ago. Let me go in and see if I can install it. And here it says ASUS setup. So let me just go ahead and try running that. I got to be administrator. It's doing something. Okay, here we go. The Intel Rapid Storage Technology. That's what it uses to do the RAID. So let me install this and see what we got. I should probably read these license agreements, but they're kind of long sometimes. I don't need a desktop shortcut, so I'm just going to tell it to install. I'll probably have to reboot after this. What I'll do is I'll go and check for Windows updates to see if there's any updates to this. It wants to know if I want to restart it right now. So let me go ahead and do a restart. Now I do want to show you what the guide is that I'm going to follow. If I go to the ASUS website, and it takes a while to find it, so I'll just provide the link right out for the ASUS. Every motherboard manufacturer, though, has a slightly different version of this. For the ASUS one, they call it the RAID Configuration Guide. PDF, and I have it printed out next to me as well. Let me zoom up a little bit. And this tells you step by step what you have to do in order to get the RAID functioning properly. So if we actually go, I think it's section 1, Yeah, section 1.1.3, and if you follow this along, you'll see the step-by-steps that we're going to do. This is what the BIOS will look like as you do these things. So I just wanted to show you this document. Here is the URL to it. It is up in the ASUS website. It just takes a little bit of searching around to find it. It's not intuitive the way they have it structured right now. Go into support, but then you pick motherboards, and then it still has trouble finding this. It was easier just to do a Google for it, the ASUS RAID configuration guide. Okay, so let me boot back into the BIOS, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, I'm booting up, and I'm trying to get into the BIOS by hitting the delete key. Let's see if we can get into it. Well, we booted up. There we go. So we're into the BIOS. The first step is to go into Advanced, and then something called PCH storage configuration, and then make sure that the SATA mode selection is set to Intel Premium with Intel Optimum System Accelerated. I want to make that choice right there. It says here if I'm using SATA storage, there's no additional settings required. Go to boot CSM compatibility port, and where it says launch CSM, I have to do a disabled, okay? So launch CSM is disabled. And then it says at this point I have to actually reboot the system. Save my changes and reboot. So I come in here where it says exit, and I want to save and reset. It's changing those two options. Then we want to come right back into the BIOS. So I'm going to hit delete again until it comes up. Okay, so I got to go into advanced again, advanced mode first, and then I got to go into advanced, and then I got to go into Intel Rapid Storage Technology. And once I'm here, I've got to create a volume, I believe. Create a RAID volume. Okay, we're in the Create RAID Volume screen. Let me go ahead and say Create RAID Volume. I have it named as SSD Read. That's good. Let me pick the two disks. First this one, and then this one. Well, it automatically did the two terabytes. We're close enough to it. I have to change the size, though, here to 128 kilobytes. And now I can do Create Volume. It defaulted to the maximum. I can make it less than that if I wanted to. Create Volume. And now we have a 1.8 terabyte RAID striped. So it's two drives that'll look like one, and we'll see how that looks. We can actually get information on it according to the instructions here. If I click on this, I can see the name of the RAID, how large it is, it's normal, it's bootable, but I'm not going to boot from it. And then down here are the two drives that it has. I can click on each one of these and get details of it. Yep, so it's in SATA port 2 and SATA port 3. So at this point, we should have a RAID volume. Let me exit and save. I don't think it actually considers that a configuration change. No, it doesn't, because we didn't actually change any settings in the BIOS. It actually created a disk layout, and we're rebooting. Let's see, we get into Windows now and see what we get. I heard the beep, so that looks good. It's a good sign. Probably going to come down to the lower screen now to log in. Yep, it's down here now. So let me just log in. I'm then going to switch to screen capture at that point. Once I'm in there. Okay, we're in. So now let me go ahead and see what the disk looks like. So if I come over here and I do a right click on this PC and I say manage, and then I should go to disk management. It sees a disk 0. It wants to know if I want to initialize that disk. I am going to say no, I want to do it manually. So it made it a disk 0 is what it did. It switched to disk drives. I still have a drive C here. That's why I'm able to boot up into Windows. But this now is the 1.8 terabyte as disk 0, uninitialized, and I move my other one to disk 1. Let me right click on it and say create a simple volume. New simple volume. Giving me trouble with that. Let me get out of it and try again. This time I'll say initialize it. It's an uninitialized disk at this point. Now it sees disk 0. I'll move this out of the way so you see what I mean. It's the same thing we just saw a moment ago. I'm going to initialize that as a GPT, which is the large block size. That's good. I'm going to say OK. So now it's an initialized disk. So now it doesn't have that little asterisk next to it. Now let me right click on it and say create new simple volume. I will default it to the entire size, 1907716 in terms of megabytes. That drive E is good. That's what it was before. I'm going to call it my edit drive. I'm giving it a name. It's going to perform a quick format, finish, and now we're in. So it opened it up. Let me show you what I mean. It looks fine here. Let me get out of this and just look at the regular this is PC. And now we have this 1.181 terabytes disk that's out there. Okay, let me switch to screen capture and I'll test it. Okay, I got Windows up as a regular user. Let me see what the drives look like. There it is. Drive E is now 1.81 terabytes, all free at this point. So let me do a test. Let me go and run the test program, the standard one we've always run, which is the Crystal Disk Mark 64. And I'm going to tell it it's already set for drive E. It knows it's 1.8 terabytes. Let's run it, see what we got. Okay, there it is in all its glory. Let me go ahead now and put these side by side. This is the new one, but look at the difference there. And I already did the calculation. So for the read, 1080 divided by 562.5, that's 192. So that's 92% increase. So let me try the write. I'm just taking the top number, the sequential. So I'm going to go 996 divided by 534.1. And that's 86.5% better in the write. So that's a phenomenal number. And it should make my rendering go a lot faster. I'll have to time it and see what we get. Well, that does it. Well, everybody, I think that worked out extremely well. Actually, better than I thought it was going to work out. The performance, 92% increase in read speed. I had no idea it would be that good. And the write speed, what was it, 86 or 87%? And of course, I got exactly what I wanted. I butted two 1 terabyte drives together and got a 2 terabyte contiguous drive, at least the way Windows sees it and the way my software will see it as I'm editing and modifying the videos that I produce for YouTube. So again, I hope you got something out of this video that you find helpful. And if you did, please do me a favor and subscribe to my channel. When my little head pops up here in a moment, click on it, follow along, and subscribe. That would really be helpful.